A great mystery has hung over the mountains of northern Mongolia since the Middle Ages. Where is the tomb of the greatest emperor of all time, Genghis Khan? Leading his cavalry, he united the Far East and the West in an empire 4 times the size of Alexander the Great's.
What do we imagine the tomb of Genghis Khan to be like if it were ever found? Tons of gold coins and things like this.
The secret is about to be unraveled. By deciphering ancient texts and analyzing the death rites of neighboring civilizations, scientists and historians are hot on the trail of his legendary tomb. All the clues point to a sacred mountain, a forbidden zone for over 800 years. Experts have gained access to this sanctuary to conduct extraordinary scientific experiments. Cutting-edge technology adapted to a different kind of archaeology make it possible today to precisely locate the tomb of Genghis Khan without any digging at all. The discovery of this archaeological grail is underway. Archaeologist Pierre-Henri Giscard is like a character from a Jules Verne novel. For over 50 years, this scientist-explorer has scoured the Earth's most inhospitable areas. At 80, he is as enthusiastic as ever.
It's worse than the Camargue, the Nile Delta and the Zambezi. Actually, it reminds me of the Okavango River. 20 years ago, we crossed the Okavango. It was marsh just like this. And there were crocodiles too. There aren't any here though.
When the Soviet Union fell, Mongolia was largely uncharted archaeological territory. UNESCO sent Professor Giscard to explore its potential. He has been coming here for 20 years now, as the steppe is so rich in important sites, both exposed and carefully concealed. He has made major discoveries here about many civilizations, such as this impressive sarcophagus dating from 300 BC. But he secretly has a far more ambitious goal: to find the tomb of Genghis Khan, which was dug 1,500 years later. Secretly, as Genghis Khan is much more than a historical figure in Mongolia, he is regarded as the father of the nation. In the capital of Ulaanbaatar, the parliament's facade was changed to honor him. How can they be sure of finding his tomb now after centuries of fruitless searches? Rare ancient text provides some clues, but the sources are incomplete, contradictory, or even fanciful, such as this 18th century map which places Genghis Khan's tomb in central China. One book stands out for its relevance though: The Secret History of the Mongols. For years it was thought to be lost until a Chinese copy was found in the 19th century. Yaroslav Lebedinsky, an eminent expert on the peoples of the steppe, knows it inside out.
The secret history of the Mongols is the only Mongol source contemporary to the events described. It was commissioned by the imperial family or individuals close to them. It is even possible its traditional title, The Secret History, alludes to a document solely intended for the imperial family, as it contains confidential facts on these rulers.
The text does not mention the location of Genghis's tomb, but contains precious information on the Temujin, the future emperor's birth name. He was born around 1160 in the Borjigin clan, nomads living in northern Mongolia. It is said Temujin was born holding a blood clot. In shamanism, this was a sign that he was destined for great things. It's impossible to determine the exact birthplace of Temujin. These tribes were always on the move. But we do know that the Borjigin clan nomadized in the Khenchi Mountains in the northeast of present-day Mongolia. Why explore a birthplace when searching for a tomb? The key to this paradox lies in Chicago. This prestigious university is home to historian John Woods, the world's leading expert on Genghis Khan.
A lot of episodes of the Secret History of the Mongols deal with events that take place around Burkhan Khaldun. Now, there's a problem locating exactly where Burhan Khaldun is. Is it, in fact, the mountain that we know of as Khenti Khan Ul today? There are certain rivers that are associated with the life of Genghis Khan, which all of arise in this area which we're calling Burhan Khaldun. And it is important, I think, to realize that in Mongol folklore, there is a notion that you should be buried somewhere near where you were born.
Some all-terrain vehicles head towards Burhan Khaldun. Is this the mountain repeatedly mentioned in the secret history? No excavation has ever been conducted here, as the entire massif is sacred to the Mongols. Professor Giscard heads this groundbreaking scientific expedition. He is accompanied by a geomorphologist and an expert in aerial and underground imaging.
It's absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
The team will use non-invasive, latest generation techniques to locate Genghis Khan's tomb. As the only limit to their thirst for knowledge, these scientists undertake to strictly respect the area's sacred nature.
From the very beginning, around the precincts of these burials, they set up an area which was known as the Great Forbidden Area, Ich Khorik Korukhe Buzurg, where people were not allowed to penetrate, and there were guards there.
Burhan Khaldun is located in the middle of a vast area of 12,000 square kilometers, whose access has been strictly controlled since the Middle Ages. At the entrance to the sanctuary, Pierre-Henri Giscard manages to convince the guards to let the vehicles through. His status as a professor at the Mongolian Science Academy for over 20 years opens every door. But there's no question of divulging the mission's real goal. It must remain a secret. The team has only managed to negotiate a 4-day stay here. The race against time is underway. Progress is slow due to the 80 kilometers of marshes that naturally protect Burhan Khaldun. The mission gets bogged down in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth.
You only see how bad it is when you get out of the Jeep.
I wasn't joking.
For sure.
And this is just the start.
I bet it is.
This is the pre-marsh. The big one is further on. I always wonder if they'll manage, and they always do. You see, this is one of the best things that could happen to me, being here. For me, it's a gateway to paradise. It's wonderful.
Temujin was 9 when his father, Yesulgai, the clan chief, was poisoned by his Tatar enemies. The different steppe tribes were always warring. The future Genghis Khan was too young to become clan chief. His family was forced into exile.
Temujin and his immediate family were abandoned by their tribe, and so doomed to a life of poverty and wandering. At the time, the Mongols, the term itself is an anachronism, we should say Mongol-speaking tribes, formed a series of quasi-independent groups linked by a vague kinship, but there was no political unity.
The Qin dynasty in northern China didn't really want to see the peoples of the steppe united in any form. And so they would constantly either intervene themselves or they would use other tribal groups such as the Tatars to intervene to undermine whatever attempt was being made to unite the different tribes there.
The first data we'll produce are photos. We'll put these together to make one big photo without any distortion, which will serve as a map. Then, as we have the geometry, we'll be able to create a digital elevation model. It's the topography and is accurate to within a few centimeters. On analyzing this, we'll see many unusual mounds, alignments, flat areas, which will be worth exploring.
Our objective is to see whether there are cavities or obvious differences whose shape would suggest they were man-made.
Absolutely.
As regards the appearance of Genghis Khan's tomb, all sources confirm the tomb was carefully concealed. This was peculiar to the Mongols of the imperial period. It differs from most practices of the nomads of the steppe, as described by Herodotus and other ancients. The Mongol sovereigns' tombs were hidden, concealed so well that nothing gave away their location.
The scientists start modeling the massif with their flying wing, looking for anomalies in the terrain relief which cannot be explained naturally. Is the tomb concealed somewhere in this immensity?
The peak of Burkhan Khaldun played a very special role in the life of Genghis Khan, as he believed it had saved him. Chased by his enemies, he took refuge on the mountain and spent some time there. When he was finally rescued, he vowed to devote his life to Burkhan Khaldun, to its spirit. He established a cult to the mountain. So between Genghis Khan and Burkhan Khaldun, there was a strong emotional bond, which justifies the search for his tomb here.
The secret history includes an account by 20-year-old Genghis. I went up to Burkhan Khaldun. I was scared and ran like an insect. I was shielded by Burkhan Khaldun. Every day I'll offer a sacrifice and pray to the mountain. Let my children and my children's children remember this. After 3 days praying to the sacred mountain, the chief shamanist deity appeared to him. Tengri, the eternal blue sky, commanded him to unify the peoples of the steppe. To accomplish this mission, he united a first horde of horsemen.
As for what he represents to Mongols, I would sometimes tell my American friends that he is a cross between George Washington and Jesus Christ, and that, in other words, he is a sacral figure. His spirit guarantees the integrity of the land, and that's one of the reasons why, again, many people argue that he must have been buried back in his homeland, because the spirit which resides, at least according to shamanist notions, in his actual physical remains continues to protect the land.
The scientists continue their investigation in the vast sanctuary. They might as well be looking for a needle in a haystack. They need more clues to guide them in their search.
The south is the privileged direction in Mongolian orientations. So as you know, the Gers always face to the south. The south is the way that we orient ourselves. We look south, and then everything is based on turn toward the south. That would be my guess. That's where I would look anyway.
On thoroughly examining the south slope, a stone circle is detected on a terrace overhanging a lake. The team heads there at once, as such geometric forms are rarely natural.
The setting and location are perfect, overlooking a lake. It's a balcony, a natural balcony. But I doubt it's natural. Don't tell me nature made this circle here. Besides, most natural circles have disparate stones in the center. There aren't any here at all. It's flat, as if the center was meant for ceremonies.
The thermal camera shows this whole area is colder.
It's perfectly round and even, so it's troubling. That said, this form here is probably natural, because look, you can see the centers raised.
Big blocks from frost riving rise more slowly.
Frost driving is a geological process whereby rocks in the subsurface split due to repeated freezing and thawing. In cold weather, water in the soil becomes solid and takes up more space. Stones are pushed to the surface and scatter according to size. So this circular arrangement is due to a natural phenomenon.
Well, if the expert says it's natural, I'll accept what he says.
Photogrammetry reveals a surprise, though. Some blocks are perfectly joined, which proves that this circle arising from a natural phenomenon was subsequently in part rearranged. But it's impossible at present to study its meaning, all the more so as a storm from Siberia is dangerously close to Burkhan Khaldun.
Storm, let's head back. It's an emergency.
The threat puts an abrupt end to the debate. They must take shelter at once.
Ça fait 15 heures qu'on est couché.
We've been here 15 hours, and in that time, a thick fog has descended, and there's a howling wind. The two things we needed were visibility and no wind. To be able to fly our devices. It's quite incredible. 2 days after leaving base camp, and we're only halfway up. So we aren't high up, but whenever we try to ascend, there's thunder and lightning. It's as if there's a curse. I don't know how it'll end, but it isn't looking good.
What a night.
Here's what the curse has brought. Wind and fog.
Maybe we're nearing our goal.
The question of what would happen if the tomb were ever discovered and the remains were actually uncovered may have to do with legends. If you got too close, various kinds of natural disasters would be unleashed. These are all part of the curse of Genghis Khan, that this means you're getting close.
It's hard to know to what extent the scientists and historians believe in these superstitions. But the clock is ticking and the 4 days are almost up. The team must take advantage of every lull, however fleeting, to make it to the summit. A major anomaly was detected during the modeling stage. A mound of impressive dimensions sits literally on the summit plateau. Have they found the tomb of Genghis Khan? Will the curse grant them enough time to confirm this?
Hold my glove.
I'm worried.
Huh?
I'm worried.
Yeah.
The team decides to send a hexacopter drone suitable for extreme conditions to precisely model the mound at low altitude.
There's lightning over there. That's great.
Okay.
Should I go backwards, forwards?
Step back.
God, it's windy.
I've lost connection.
We have to go.
Bring it back. The signal's fading too. Left, left, left.
The wind's pushing me. I've hit a snag. Darn. Oh, darn it. I'll try and land it over there.
We've lost a pad. I don't know if it's okay. The camera, it hit something, but it seems,
Yeah.
Will we have images?
Yes, we will. And despite the incident, as I had these glasses on and could see what was going on, I saw the boundary clearly between the mound and the plateau. There's a clear linear boundary.
Perfect.
And I could also see the blocks making up the mound are of uniform size. So all these clues suggest it's man-made.
The investigation's initial findings are extremely promising, but more evidence is needed to prove that this dome is Genghis Khan's tomb. The historians continue to study his life in search of further clues.
There are several periods in Genghis Khan's career as a military leader. An initial period where, with the protection of the Karites and of their leader, whose vassal he was, he regained his social status and became clan chief and tribal chief again. Then a second period where he grouped around him the Mongol tribes and even some Turkic tribes. That's when he became Khan of the Mongols. The third period culminated in the Great Assembly of 1206, during which Temujin, Khan of the Mongols, or King of the Mongols, was proclaimed Genghis Khan. The title was created specifically for him and became the name he is known by in history. It roughly means universal ruler, literally oceanic ruler.
After subduing the different nomadic tribes one by one, Temujin was proclaimed Genghis Khan at 45. He revolutionized the tribal organization of his subjects by forming for the first time a cohesive and disciplined army from the patchwork of peoples who swore allegiance to him. The unification of the steppe nomads was just one stage for this ambitious man. Genghis Khan already coveted neighboring sedentary civilizations. At the time, the former Chinese Empire was divided into several independent kingdoms.
The new imperial prestige of Genghis Khan led not only to victories, but also to voluntary alliances. One was particularly important, that of the Uyghurs, because it was from them the Mongols took their alphabet and so created a literary language which became a tool of the imperial administration.
Genghis Khan, from humble origins and illiterate, knew that writing was an incredible lever for managing his new empire. Scribes wrote down the Yasak, a code of law he himself had promulgated. For the first time, there was a reference of required and prohibited conduct, with a range of corresponding punishments. This code applied to civilian as well as military life. Its purpose was to harmonize rules between peoples of very different cultures and religions.
Is that granite?
Yes, it's white granite. Well, granitic rock.
Those extrusions granitic too?
It all is.
So it's primary?
Yes.
The expedition members climb the dome. They are just meters from Burkhan Khaldun's summit and an almost surreal discovery. In the plateau's center stand tugs, poles with horse or yak tail hairs topped with a trident, the emblem of Genghis Khan. In shamanistic belief, the Sulde or warrior spirit resides in this banner, as has Genghis Khan's Sulde since his death. What could their presence on the summit mean?
Getting here is hard work. It's very hard work indeed, but it's fantastic.
Pilgrims seem to identify Burkhan Khaldun with the Mongol emperor. Are they custodians of other secrets? The medieval texts indicate that Genghis Khan's mausoleum was protected by elite soldiers, the Dakhads. Is it possible this tradition still exists? New mysteries for the expedition members. It's too late to solve them now. Their time is up and they have to leave the sanctuary. But they will continue to investigate back in France. Despite the drone crash, a partial modeling of the summit was calculated. Renowned geoarchaeologist Tara Bezin analyzes the form. Will she be able to determine if the dome is natural or man-made?
What's the resolution?
It's in the region of 10 to 15 centimeters, so it isn't very fine. You can't see the details. It's 250 meters long. To have such perfect geometry over 250 meters is really quite troubling.
The shape itself doesn't provide enough discriminating elements to say whether it's an anthropic or natural structure. The position of this element, though, will play a role in our investigation. With regard to the altitudes, it appears to be isolated. It's in a summit position. This could support your theory. Usually, residual levels of natural origins match other levels found on the opposite slope, or the northernmost or southernmost slope.
Yes, there's nothing like that in the vicinity.
Yes, I'd agree with that. But what is the formation like? Is it a pile of debris? Is it just rock? What is it exactly? If it's a pile of debris, few agents of transport could carry it to the top of a mountain. The wind couldn't deposit it. The rivers are down in the valley. Only glaciers can deposit such formations. However, on the whole, they deposit on valley bottoms too. The missing clue is the composition of your hillock or tumulus, because that's what we're trying to figure out. Is it a hillock or a tumulus?
We were able to observe it with a thermal camera. The dome cover is homogeneous with same-sized blocks. These two black patches you can see here are...
What are they?
It's snow. Snow. That's still on the dome. But most importantly, there are two phenomena that are quite strange. We have these two distinct, perfect circles. Again, they're almost invisible to the naked eye. They showed up on the thermal camera. It could be an arrangement.
Yes, on the surface. Two circles that show up like that on thermal images can't be natural. After all, it's a slope. The pull of gravity means stone fall to the bottom of a slope. They don't tend to form a circle, so they're definitely an arrangement. Which slope is this?
The south slope, the one that's sacred to the Mongols.
All right. We can say this mound on the surface at least has elements that were arranged by humans. But we can't determine if it's completely man-made. So, to know if it's a natural or anthropic structure, it's imperative you obtain information on the subsurface.
Yes, but we can't remove anything.
Can't you excavate it?
No, it's sacred. There can't be any contact with the ground whatsoever. We can't even use a radar on it.
How about a GPR?
Point by point, that's what we have to do. So we've no choice but to go back.
Good luck.
A new mission is planned to try to unlock Burkhan Khaldun's final secrets with ground imaging technology. Organizing such logistics takes a lot of time. Pierre-Henri Giscard uses it to verify a hunch he is obsessed about. He finds the dome's distinctive shape eerily similar to the Chinese imperial tombs he studied in the past. So he goes to Xi'an in central China to check out his theory. After absorbing the Tangut and Uyghur kingdoms, Genghis Khan led one of the most daring military expeditions ever against the steppe nomads' traditional enemy, who thought they were safe behind the Great Wall of China.
Their traditional enemy had been the Qin dynasty of North China. So eventually that becomes one of his major, shall we say, foreign policy goals. And when he attacks China, he is able to circumvent the Great Wall. This is a typical tactic on the part of Genghis Khan, not only in China but elsewhere. If there was a fortified city, he would go around it and devastate the hinterland, or devastate the countryside.
For almost 1,000 years, Xi'an was the capital of China. The emperors of 3 dynasties are buried there. We find Professor Giscard on the city's walls with Professor Jiangguo Wu, an expert on Chinese imperial tombs.
When Genghis Khan's armies arrived in the area, is it known whether they went to the western side, where the great Han tombs are?
Definitely. When Genghis rode across the region, he saw the tombs of the Han.
He must have wondered what they were.
The tombs of the Han emperors are pyramid structures.
And he saw them.
He saw them.
Obviously.
For sure.
Yes.
The Han dynasty ruled the empire of China until the start of our era. At the time of Genghis Khan's conquest, 12 centuries later, these pyramidal tombs were still the largest structures in all Eurasia, definitely a symbol for the conqueror.
It's incredible. It's the same shape, with the terrace and the dome on top. These 2 tombs really are twin brothers. This tomb and the tomb in Mongolia, one and the same. The only difference is, in Mongolia, the base is natural, and the tumulus is man-made, whereas here, it's all man-made.
What you're saying is, Genghis Khan saw this when he came here, and then copied it.
That's our theory. He said to his generals, if ever I die, make me something like this.
The cultural links with China were especially close. They were ancient because a Mongolian-speaking dynasty, that of the Liaos, had previously ruled part of China. China itself had borrowed from the nomads over the centuries in the fields of horse riding, weaponry, and military organization, while the different nomad peoples, through time, had shown they were eager for Chinese luxury.
So it is quite possible that all kinds of exchanges took place that way. In terms of burial customs, I don't know. Possibly yes, possibly no.
Pierre-Henri Giscard begins his investigation of the Han Dynasty tombs. These pyramids were made of loess, a kind of compacted sand. Little is known of their internal structure, as it's impossible to excavate such friable tombs without destroying them. Besides, they often end up subsiding over time.
It's quite spectacular. The burial chamber has flattened. It's true that it's only sand. If the bottom breaks, the whole thing collapses. So we can see exactly where the burial chamber is. If we dug a 35-meter shaft in the middle, we'd reach the emperor. Does the main entrance face east?
At the time, it faced east. According to the system of the period, that's the main tunnel.
And then the big hole caused it to collapse. It caved in. The tunnel's roof collapsed. It's clearly visible. You can see the break there.
The conquest of North China continued relentlessly. After laying waste to the countryside, Genghis Khan's armies arrived in 1215 at the gates of Beijing, capital of the Jin Empire. Invincible in close combat, the Mongol horsemen now had to besiege an impregnable fortress.
Naturally, many questions about Genghis Khan and Mongol conquest focus on the nature of the Mongol military. What made the Mongol military so powerful, and why was it able to carry out such huge conquests in such a short period of time. We should probably begin by saying that they had no special weapons, that they didn't have any secret weapons. They were pragmatists and they were adaptable, and if they saw a certain kind of advantage in a certain tactic or an engine, a machine, they would adapt it, and they would bring the people in to their army who were able to build those machines, were able to teach them.
Beijing was gruesomely punished for its stubborn resistance. A month of looting and killing ensued. The Han Dynasty pyramids have never been excavated. But for his investigation, Pierre-Henri Giscard needs to know about the Chinese imperial tomb's internal structure. Professor Wu gains access to the tomb of Yongtai, a princess of another dynasty, that of the Tang, which dates from the 8th century, just 400 years before the Mongol conquest.
Is the entrance on the south side?
Yes, on the south side.
And the tomb is on the north?
That's right. From the Tang period onwards, the main entrance was always on the south side. That's the south. The antechamber. Isn't it beautiful? The murals are still intact, with all these figures. 36 ladies of honor to serve the princess in the hereafter.
And 2 eunuchs to guard them. How long is this tunnel?
87 meters.
87. And the depth between up there and here?
16 meters.
16 meters. And how wide is it?
3.9 meters.
So when they brought the princess's body, it was carried along here.
That's right. This is the basalt sarcophagus. The tunnel is only 3.9 meters wide, so it's fairly wide but not big enough for this. The sarcophagus was assembled here.
It was assembled on the spot.
The circumstances of Genghis Khan's death are unclear. It's said he collapsed after a hunt during another military expedition against China.
He died in August, probably of the year 1227. He was quite old. We don't know exactly, the Mongols accept that he was 65 years old. So one of the questions that arises, because Genghis Khan did not want it known that he had died for fear of rebellion against him, that the funeral cortege, as it took the body back to Mongolia, killed every living thing that they encountered, so that no one could pass on the news that Genghis Khan had died.
Genghis Khan died in what is now the province of Gansu, not far from the Xi'an tombs. His body was probably repatriated to his birthplace, with many precautions taken to conceal his burial place. 800 years later, Pierre-Henri Giscard follows in the wake of his hearse.
For our work here, I consulted a shaman because I was really worried. The shaman said, "No, you'll sort it out easily."
Did he say what we were looking for?
No, he didn't mention it. I simply asked, "Will everything go well?" Everything will go well.
Let's hope that the shaman is right. Despite the team's seemingly relaxed air, this expedition is as secret and dangerous as the last.
Look, Genghis Khan conquered China, or northern China. He conquered parts of the Islamic Middle East. How is it that not one of those items has ever shown up in any private collection or any museum anywhere in the world? What happened to all of that booty? My mind goes in various ways when I think about this, about what could possibly be buried with him.
What could it contain apart from Genghis Khan's body? Definitely a wealth of grave goods, We can compare it to the accounts of the funerals of other imperial family members. They mention an abundance of grave goods and the presence of bodies, people who were sacrificed at the time of the funeral. We know, for instance, that Ogadai, Genghis Khan's successor, 2 years after his death, had 40 young girls sacrificed on his predecessor's tomb to serve him in the hereafter. The succession was prepared in advance. Mongolia itself and the conquered territories were divided among his sons.
Before Ogodei was officially proclaimed emperor, his younger brother Tolui acted as regent for 2 years. This is why Tolui is often added to the list of the 5 great Khans of the Mongol imperial dynasty. The last 2 were his own sons. Genghis Khan's successors continued and completed his conquest. According to some estimates, these wars caused the deaths of 10% of humanity.
If we look at Genghis Khan, we can see bloodshed occurred as a result of the expansion and creation of the Mongol Empire. But at the same time, in the person of Genghis Khan, you have a man who, number one, united his people. He gave his people a written language. The Mongolian was not written before the time of Genghis Khan. He created a system of laws which systematized the customary law of the Mongols and created an overarching system of laws. And these seem to me to be fairly significant achievements for someone who is known only as a bloody conqueror.
After an eventful night driving through the marshes, the expedition members finally arrive at their base camp. They're surprised to see that they're not the only ones here. Their appearance explains the vague presence felt on the first mission. Who are they? Simple pilgrims or dahads? The mysterious soldiers charged with protecting Genghis Khan's tomb according to the ancient texts. The scientists cannot risk being caught at work. Raphael Hautefort and his assistant sneak up to the dome for the day. Professor Giscard is too old for such a swift climb. He has told them where to search with the scanner by following the structure of the Chinese imperial tombs. Visibility is perfect and the wind mild, a godsend. Before using the scanner, they send the flying wing to precisely model the summit plateau.
Go on, honey. Into the wind. We're counting on you.
The discoveries come thick and fast. New stone structures have been erected since the last mission. An outer wall, an oval, and strange forms on the sides of the dome. The extent of the work proves the cult practiced here is as active as ever. What could these geoglyphs mean? Yaroslav Lebedinsky is the leading expert on the symbols of Central Asia. He will try to unlock their secrets.
Pierre-Henri Giscard sent me this copy of the stone structures found on the slopes of Burkhan Khaldun. At first glance, I can see a number of tamgas, that's to say, a sign of ownership used by the Mongols. At least 2 of these tamgas can be identified immediately as belonging to members of the Mongol imperial dynasty. We know this thanks to numismatists who found these signs on coins minted by the Mongols. Tamga number 1 is that of the great Khan Mongke, who reigned from 1251 to 1259. And Tamga number 4 is evidently that of the great Khan Guyuk, who ruled from 1246 to 1249, as seen here on one of his coins. These 6 tamgas represent 6 different figures who all belong to the Mongol imperial dynasty. We can also see the visual link between these signs. They were based on a first motif and then evolved to give rise to tamga subgroups. Genghis Khan's personal tamga is not known for sure. But if the theory, which links the symbols on Burkhan Khaldun to the first Mongol emperors, is actually correct, then Genghis Khan's tamga is this circle with a stem and crossbar. This idea of a Mongol dynastic necropolis, where all the rulers were buried, or at least the first rulers, is formally corroborated by Marco Polo's text, which states the following. All the great Khans and princes of the blood of Genghis Khan are carried to a great mountain to be buried, wherever they die, even 100 days' journey from it, as they do not want to be buried anywhere else.
So it appears there is not one, but 6 Mongol Khans buried here, the entire Genghis Khan dynasty. What information do the Tamga builders possess to know symbols unknown to leading experts? The circles that showed up on the thermal image during the first mission are old Tamgas, which collapsed over time, but whose bases still emit thermal signatures. The sanctuary's guardians rebuilt them between the 2 expeditions. There is no doubt that the cult practiced here has existed for a very long time, probably since the death of Genghis Khan.
Scan. Scan.
The team has to finish taking measurements as quickly as possible, so as not to risk getting caught. It would be awkward, to say the least. The scanner accurately measures the electromagnetic conductivity of the subsurface to a depth of 4 meters. Interpreting this data should reveal the nature of the dome.
Scan.
Perfect. Now the last one.
We meet up with Tara Bezin at Paris-Sorbonne University. Usually very restrained, she is visibly excited now. Tara is here to see Alain Tabag, Professor Emeritus in Geophysics, who has deciphered the scanner's data.
Here are the maps I found at the Jussieu campus. It's good because they cover our sector. We're exactly here. Obviously, the area is white because it's a forbidden zone, so it doesn't appear on the map. But you can see the granitic areas start roughly in this sector and probably extend downwards. So did you manage to process the data?
Looking at the geomagnetic measurements taken on the dome resulted in the following, which is very satisfactory. The electric resistivity, the magnetic susceptibility, and the permittivity show the ground has a sandy texture, which developed on a crystalline environment and through alteration.
But you don't get a 40-meter-high dome simply from natural alteration, from natural debris.
Yes, there's no doubt that the dome is not a natural formation.
You're right.
It would have been flattened for sure, by the wind and rain. So we can consider that an established fact.
So it could be a burial mound.
Absolutely, a tumulus.
Wow, I'm absolutely thrilled. The only thing I was after was what you've just said. It's exactly what we were hoping for.
Excellent.
So the composition of this tumulus, since that's what it is, would probably be local.
Yes, it's sand, local sand.
Okay. That's interesting because the digital elevation model
Yes.
shows an anomaly in the terrain, which could well have resulted from the extraction of material.
I see. To the north of the tumulus here.
That's right. There are other anomalies in the terrain. Here, you can see it's more disturbed.
Yes, it's more disturbed here than here or here, where the topographic surface is extremely smooth.
A tumulus of such proportions takes time to build, and it's more practical to make use of materials close to the site. And if the layout is similar to that of Chinese tombs, with a burial chamber under the pile of debris, could the scanner have detected it?
We only have access to the first 4 meters, so it's impossible to know what's underneath.
Alain Tabag has formally validated their findings. His conclusion is definite. The dome was built by man, with the same material, sand, and in the same form as the Chinese imperial pyramids. The scientists are now certain Genghis Khan's tomb is on top of Burkhan Khaldun, his favorite refuge. For whom else would such an imposing tumulus have been built in a sanctuary that has been off limits since the 13th century? Who else's tomb would have been protected and venerated until now? New exploration techniques will one day mean the burial chamber can be viewed however deep it is buried. But for now, only a destructive excavation would reveal its contents. The Mongolian government does not appear willing to authorize excavation, but not only for fear of the curse on this tomb. If his remains were exhumed, Genghis Khan would lose his divine status instantly and become a mere mortal again. He will always be the greatest conqueror of all time, but would become a man like any other. The distinctive shape of the dome at the heart of Professor Giscard's investigation might, after all, be the last laugh for Genghis Khan.
It's the same shape, huh?
For sure. When you see this after the dome,
Obviously.
you understand the symbolism at once.
The hill opens up like a huge theatre. Ta-da! The curtain is raised, and there he is. A few insiders notice it and understand. Others just see it without understanding. If everything is revealed to the people in a few years, the authorities will say it was never hidden. It was there. It's incredible.
Hidden in plain sight.
Yes, hidden in plain sight. Absolutely.